The alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning, gleaming silver against the black of space. Within hours, every government on the planet knew that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Ambassador Vreth stood at the airlock of the International Space Station, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence as he adjusted to the artificial gravity. Behind him, 4 other representatives from the Galactic Council waited nervously. They had studied the transmissions from Earth, learned the dominant languages, and prepared themselves for this historic moment. Commander Tay floated forward with an easy smile, his hand extended in the greeting gesture their files had documented. "Welcome to the ISS, Ambassador. We're honored to have you here." Vreth's translator device hummed softly before producing words. "The honor is ours, Commander. The Galactic Council is pleased to establish relations with your species." Tay led them through the station's corridors, pointing out various modules and explaining their functions. The aliens nodded politely, taking notes on their strange crystalline devices. Everything seemed normal and diplomatic until they passed the exercise module. Through the transparent door, 2 humans were moving in ways that made Vreth's blood run cold. They were striking each other. Hard. One human, a woman with her dark hair pulled back, dodged a punch and countered with a kick. The other, a stocky man, blocked it and swept her legs. "Commander!" Vreth's voice rose in alarm. "Your crew members are engaged in combat. Should we call for security?" Tay glanced through the window and laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, that's just Kai and Yuna. They're sparring." Sparring? The translator struggled with the word, offering 3 different possible meanings, none of which made sense. Training. Practice fighting. Tay waved at the 2 through the window. They waved back, smiling, before resuming their violent dance. They do it every day. Helps them stay sharp. Vreth watched as the woman took a hard hit to her ribs but simply grinned and kept going. But there is no threat present. Why would they practice combat when there is no enemy? For fun, Tay said simply, and to be ready if they ever need it. Fun. The word appeared on Vreth's translator, but it might as well have been in an alien language. The Galactic Council species exercised for health. They trained for specific threats, but deliberately hitting each other? For enjoyment? The cultural liaison, a woman named Hana, joined them in the observation deck. She had kind eyes and spoke slowly, clearly sensing the aliens' confusion. "Ambassador Vreth, I understand this might seem strange to you. Humans have many activities we do for recreation, for fun, things that aren't strictly necessary but that we enjoy. Enjoy violence?" Another council member spoke up, their voice translator making the question sound even more bewildered. "Not violence exactly," Hana explained. "Challenge. Testing ourselves. Kai and Yuna aren't trying to hurt each other. They're trying to improve. To be better than they were yesterday." Vreth made a note on his device. The symbols glowed briefly before fading. "In our civilizations, all activities serve clear purposes. Survival, reproduction, advancement of knowledge. This, recreation, is a new concept." "Well, you're in for a treat then," Tay said, checking his watch. "It's movie night, in the common area. You're welcome to join us." An hour later, Vreth deeply regretted accepting the invitation. The humans had gathered in their recreational space, floating in small groups around a large screen. Engineer Wu had explained that they would be watching something called a horror movie, a story designed to frighten them. Vreth could not understand why anyone would voluntarily experience fear. The movie began. Within minutes, humans were gasping, some covering their eyes, others gripping their armrests. When something jumped out on screen, several humans screamed. And then, they laughed. They were terrifying themselves and finding it amusing. "Why?" Vreth whispered to Hana, who sat nearby munching on something called popcorn. "Why cause yourselves fear when you are safe?" Hana smiled. "It's exciting. The fear is fake, so we can enjoy the thrill without real danger. Plus, It's fun to see who jumps the highest. On screen, a character was being chased by a monster. The humans watching were shouting at the screen, telling the character where to run, knowing full well it couldn't hear them. Some were leaning forward, completely absorbed. Others were half hiding behind their hands, but peeking through their fingers. When the movie ended, the humans were energized, talking excitedly about their favorite scary parts. Wu was laughing about how he'd spilled his drink during a jump scare. Another crew member was already suggesting an even scarier movie for next week. Vreth and his team returned to their quarters in silence. Once the door sealed, they all began talking at once. They hurt each other for practice when there's no war. They frighten themselves for entertainment when they're completely safe. Did you see the one called Mira? She watched the entire film with a smile on her face. She enjoyed being scared. Vreth raised a hand for silence. We need to report this to the council. Humans are different. They seek out discomfort. They create challenges that don't exist. They simulate danger for pleasure. Is it psychological damage? One council member suggested. Perhaps their evolution was so traumatic that they can't function without stress? Or perhaps, Vreth said slowly, they have a completely different relationship with adversity than we do. He thought about the sparring match, about Kai's bleeding lip and Yuna's bruised arm, about how they'd both been smiling the entire time. He thought about the humans screaming at monsters that didn't exist and then laughing about it afterward. The Galactic Council had made first contact with thousands of species. They had met warriors and pacifists, hive minds and individuals, silicon-based life, and energy beings. But they had never met anyone quite like humans. Species that avoided pain. That was normal. Species that fled from fear. That was logical. Species that optimized for safety and comfort. That was universal. Until now, Vreth began composing his report. Initial observation of human species reveals unusual behavioral patterns. Humans appear to voluntarily engage in activities that simulate danger, create discomfort, or induce fear responses. They describe these activities as fun and recreational. Further study required to understand if this represents species-wide psychological anomaly or previously unknown evolutionary adaptation. He paused, then added one more line. Note: despite strange behaviors, humans appear functional, intelligent, and socially stable. Threat assessment: unclear. Recommend extended observation period. Through the window of their quarters, Vreth could see Earth rotating slowly below. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were probably doing incomprehensible things to themselves. For fun, the galaxy, Vreth realized, had just become a much more interesting place, and potentially much more dangerous, though perhaps not in the way the Council had expected. 3 weeks after first contact, the Galactic Council approved a joint research mission. A mineral-rich asteroid field near Jupiter needed surveying, and it would be an excellent opportunity for humans and aliens to work together. Bin adjusted his helmet as the shuttle approached the temporary research station. As mining operations specialist, he was in charge of the human team. Beside him, the alien supervisor, a being named Quell, was reviewing safety protocols for the 15th time. All personnel must remain inside protected zones, Quell was saying through the translator. The automated drones will handle all exterior work. No organic beings should be exposed to risk. Bin nodded, though he found it odd. Back on Earth, humans did their most important work in the most dangerous places. But he was trying to be diplomatic. The Council species had very different ideas about safety. The first week went smoothly. The aliens piloted their drones with precision, mapping the asteroid field and collecting samples. The humans monitored systems and ran analysis. Everyone stayed safe inside the station, and the humans were getting bored. I'm losing my mind, Nari, the pilot, complained in the break room on day 8. I trained for 5 years to fly in space, and I'm sitting at a desk watching robots do all the fun stuff. I know, Jin, Another team member agreed. My muscles are turning to jelly. We need to do something. That's when Mira had the idea. Guys, she said, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. The cargo bay has minimal gravity, and we have 3 maintenance pods that aren't being used. Bin immediately understood. You're thinking what I'm thinking? Gravity games? Nari's eyes lit up. Within an hour, they had set up an obstacle course in the cargo bay. Crates were positioned at different heights. Compressed air canisters were requisitioned from storage. The maintenance pods were borrowed for unofficial use. Mira went first, strapping into a maintenance pod designed for delicate repairs. In her hands, it became a stunt vehicle. She flipped it backwards, spun it sideways, and threaded it through gaps that seemed impossible. The other humans cheered and kept score. 7 barrel rolls, Jin called out. New record. Then it was Nari's turn. She outdid Mira immediately, adding twists to the rolls and finishing with a spiral that made everyone dizzy just watching. When she finally stopped, she pushed herself out of the pod and immediately grabbed a meal pouch. Are you going to eat right after spinning like that? Bin asked, impressed and slightly horrified. It's part of the challenge, Nari said, taking a big bite. Eat without throwing up. Extra points. That's when the aliens discovered them. Quell entered the cargo bay with Vreth and 2 security officers. They stopped dead at the scene before them. Jin was currently using compressed air canisters like a rocket pack, deliberately bouncing off walls at high speed. Each impact made a loud bang that echoed through the bay. What are you doing? Quell's translator couldn't quite capture the sheer panic in their voice. Jin miscalculated his next bounce and slammed into a support beam. The humans winced at the impact. Jin floated there for a second, dazed, then started laughing. I'm okay. That was awesome. The aliens rushed forward with medical scanners. Jin waved them off, still chuckling. Seriously, I'm fine. Just knocked my breath out. That's going to be a great bruise, though. Vreth's 3 eyes were wide. You are injured. Why are you laughing? Because it was hilarious, Mira called out. Did you see his face right before impact? The humans were all grinning. Jin pushed off the beam and floated back to his friends, who were already teasing him about his crash. He was rubbing his shoulder but seemed genuinely happy about the whole thing. Bin floated over to the aliens, trying to smooth things over. We called it the gravity games. Fun? Vreth repeated the word like it was poison. You are risking physical damage for fun. Again. Vreth. 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 Well, yeah. Bin gestured at the obstacle course. It's not real danger. Just minor bumps and bruises. Builds character. You know? No. Quell said flatly. We do not know. In our species, physical damage is avoided at all costs. Our drones take risks. Our people stay safe. Nari drifted over, still looking slightly green from her spinning. But doesn't that get boring? Never testing yourself? Never pushing your limits? We test equipment, Quell explained. We push technological limits. We do not push our bodies to failure for entertainment. But that's the best part. Jin was back, his shoulder already showing a purple bruise through his thin shirt. Bragging rights. I just crashed harder than anyone this month. That's story material for years. The aliens exchanged looks. Their translators couldn't convey their expressions, but their body language screamed confusion and concern. Vreth pulled out his recording device. Explain to me the value of bragging rights. What material resources do you gain? Effer. None, Bin admitted. But everyone will know I'm the one who set up the best gravity games course. And that Nari has the strongest stomach. And that Jin can take a hit and laugh it off. That's worth something. Worth what precisely? The humans paused. They looked at each other, trying to find words for something they'd never had to explain before. Respect. Mira finally said. We respect people who can do difficult things, who can push themselves and get back up when they fail. Jin just showed us he can take a hard hit and stay cheerful. That tells us something about who he is. It tells us he makes poor trajectory calculations, Quell observed. It tells us he's tough, Nari corrected, and that he doesn't let fear stop him from trying new things. Those are good qualities in a person. Vreth was recording everything. So you deliberately damage yourselves to gain social status that has no material value. And you consider this normal behavior. Extremely normal? Bin confirmed. Back on Earth, we have entire sports based on this concept. People compete to see who can do the most dangerous or difficult things. Millions watch for entertainment. Your entire species does this? Another alien security officer spoke up for the first time. Pretty much, Jin said, experimentally moving his shoulder. Some more than others, but yeah, it's kind of what we do. The aliens retreated to the corner of the cargo bay for a private discussion. The humans could see them gesturing frantically at their devices, probably filing reports about the insane humans who broke themselves for social points. Should we pack up the course? Mira asked quietly. Probably, Bin sighed. Diplomatic mission and all that, but Nari was grinning. Did you see their faces when Jin hit that beam, though? Absolutely priceless. Worth it, Jin agreed, still poking at his bruise. Later that evening, Bin found a message waiting in his quarters. It was from Quell, formal and coldly polite. Human team is requested to refrain from self-damaging recreational activities for the duration of the joint mission. The Galactic Council is filing a psychological evaluation request for your species. We are concerned about apparent species-wide suicidal tendencies. Bin read it twice and started laughing. He forwarded it to the rest of the human team with a single comment. They think we're suicidal. Should we tell them? About base jumping? Nari's reply came immediately. Let's tell them about free climbing. I want to see Vreth's face. Nari. Jin added, or bull riding, or whitewater rafting, or, Mira cut in. Guys, we're going to give them a collective heart attack. Whatever their species has, instead of hearts. But Bin was already composing a presentation titled Human Recreational Activities. A brief overview. If the council wanted a psychological evaluation, they'd give them one. A thorough one. The galaxy had no idea what it was in for. The Galactic Council meeting lasted 6 hours. Reports from the asteroid mission had raised more questions than answers about humanity. Finally, they made a decision. Send a sociologist to Earth itself to study humans in their natural environment. Velm accepted the assignment with academic enthusiasm. As a specialist in alien cultures, Velm had studied hundreds of species. Humans would be just another research project. Velm was very wrong about that. The assignment started simply enough. Velm would shadow Hyun, an off-duty astronaut who had returned to Earth for vacation. It seemed perfect. A trained professional would surely represent the more rational side of humanity. That assumption died on the first day. Hyun picked Velm up from the landing site with a huge smile. Excited to show you around. First stop, we're going skydiving. Skydiving? Velm's translator processed the word. Jumping from high altitude? Why would we do that? Is the aircraft malfunctioning? Hyun laughed. No. It's for fun. The rush is amazing. 2 hours later, Velm clung to the inside of the aircraft while Hyun stood at the open door, wind screaming past, grinning like a lunatic. He gave a thumbs up and jumped out. Just jumped, out of a perfectly functional aircraft, 4 kilometers above the ground. Through the window, Velm watched Hyun fall, spinning and whooping with joy. Before deploying a thin fabric parachute, other humans were jumping out too, flipping and forming patterns in the air like some kind of insane aerial dance. The pilot, a woman named Un, noticed Velm's distress. First time seeing skydiving? Don't worry. Hyun's done this hundreds of times. But why? Velm managed to ask. Why would he risk death hundreds of times? Un shrugged. It's fun. The adrenaline rush is incredible. Makes you feel alive. He is alive, Velm pointed out. He doesn't need to jump from aircraft to maintain biological functions. Sure. But there's being alive, and then there's feeling alive. Big difference. Velm made extensive notes. The distinction Un was making seemed important, even if it made no logical sense. The next day brought new horrors. Hyun took Velm to a place called a rock climbing gym. Humans were climbing vertical walls using only their hands and feet. Some wore safety ropes. Some didn't. A young woman scaled a wall without any equipment at all, fingers gripping holds smaller than Velm's eyes. She hung 4 meters above a thin mat, muscles trembling, calculating her next move. Then she reached, caught a tiny ledge, and pulled herself up. When she dropped back to the mat, she was smiling despite looking exhausted. That's Ray, Hyun said. She's training for a free solo climb in Yosemite. No ropes, no safety gear. Just her and the rock. That's suicide, Velm stated. Nah. Ray overheard and walked over, wiping chalk from her hands. It's calculated risk. I know my limits. I trained for years before attempting anything dangerous. It's not about being reckless. It's about being capable. Velm studied her. But you could use safety equipment. Why choose not to? Because it's purer. Ray explained. It's just me and the mountain. Every move has to be perfect. That focus, that presence in the moment, you can't get that anywhere else. It's like meditation, except if you lose focus, you die. That sounds terrible. It's the most alive I ever feel, Ray said simply, and went back to her wall. The week continued in a blur of incomprehensible activities. Hyun took Velm to an amusement park where humans paid money to be flung around at dangerous speeds on something called a roller coaster. They screamed in terror and then immediately got back in line to do it again. At a martial arts tournament, humans consensually punched and kicked each other while crowds cheered. The matches were brutal, and the competitors showed obvious injuries, but they bowed respectfully to each other afterward and smiled. Velm watched a surfing competition where humans rode waves that could easily kill them. When one surfer was thrown under the water by a massive wave and didn't surface for 30 seconds, Velm prepared to call emergency services. But the surfer popped up, laughing, and paddled back out for more. Gnarly wipeout, someone shouted, and the surfer gave a thumbs up. Perhaps most disturbing was the marathon Velm attended with Ray. Thousands of humans running for over 40 kilometers. For no reason. No predator chased them. No prize awaited at the end except a cheap medal and a t-shirt. Velm watched Ray cross the finish line after 3 hours of running. Her legs were shaking. Her face was bright red. She looked ready to collapse, and she was crying with happiness. Why are you crying? Velm asked, genuinely confused. Are you injured? No. Ray gasped, accepting water from a volunteer. These are happy tears. I beat my personal record. God, that hurt so good. Hurt. Good? The translator struggled with the contradictory phrase. Yeah. Ray was stretching, wincing but smiling. That's what runner's high feels like. You push through the pain and something in your brain just clicks. Everything becomes clear. Plus, I get to eat whatever I want tonight without guilt. Pizza and ice cream. Here I come. Velm realized something troubling. The most capable humans seemed to be the ones who sought out the most danger. Ray was an engineer who helped design spacecraft, yet she spent her free time climbing mountains and running until she collapsed. Hyun was a trained astronaut trusted with billion-dollar equipment, yet he jumped out of aircraft for entertainment. The pattern was completely backward from every other species. In the Galactic Council, high-value individuals were protected, kept safe, preserved, but humans seem to think that their most valuable people should deliberately risk themselves during their rest periods. That evening, Velm sat in Hyun's apartment, reviewing notes while Hyun made dinner. I've been observing you for 6 days, Velm said carefully. You have jumped from aircraft, climbed walls, ridden waves, and today you want to show me something called white water rafting. where we navigate a rapid river in a small boat. Yeah, it's awesome, Hyun confirmed, chopping vegetables. But you are an astronaut. Your species invested enormous resources in your training. You are valuable. Why does your culture permit you to risk yourself unnecessarily? Hyun paused his cooking. That's a good question. He thought for a moment. I think it's because those experiences make me better at my job. Space is dangerous, right? Things go wrong. Systems fail. When I'm in a crisis up there, I need to think clearly under pressure. How do I train that? Simulations? Velm suggested. Sure, simulations help. But they're not real. Your brain knows it's fake. Hyun resumed chopping. But when I'm free climbing and my grip starts to slip, that fear is real. My brain has to work through actual fear and find solutions. When I'm surfing and a wave holds me under, I have to control panic with limited oxygen. Those experiences teach me things simulations can't. So it is training, Velm said, feeling like something was finally making sense. Yes and no. Hyun started cooking the vegetables. It's training, but it's also just living. Like Un said, there's a difference between being alive and feeling alive. Humans aren't meant to be comfortable and safe all the time. We're meant to struggle and overcome. That's when we're happiest. Velm watched this human who had traveled to space, who had seen Earth from orbit, who had everything needed for survival and comfort, explain why he still needed to seek out danger. I think I'm beginning to understand, Velm said slowly. For my species, safety is the goal. For humans, safety is just the starting point. Hyun grinned. Now you're getting it. So, whitewater rafting tomorrow? I promise it's safer than it looks. Mostly. Velm's report that night was extensive. The conclusion was simple but profound. Humans are not damaged or suicidal. They have evolved a completely different relationship with adversity. They seek challenges the way other species seek comfort. They train for crises by creating artificial ones. Their recreation is their education. Recommend extreme caution in understanding human psychology, but also recommend reassessment of their capabilities. A species this comfortable with discomfort may be uniquely suited for tasks the Council considers impossible. Velm's report triggered an emergency session of the Galactic Council. If what the sociologist claimed was true, humans weren't just oddly reckless. They had built an entire civilization around seeking out difficulty. The Council assigned a full research team to investigate. What they found was worse than they'd imagined. Or better. They weren't sure which. The team started with something called the entertainment industry. Within hours, they were drowning in data that made no sense. Humans had created entire facilities dedicated to simulating danger. Theme parks, they were called. Massive structures where humans paid money to be scared, spun around, dropped from heights, or thrown through loops at high speeds. And there were thousands of these parks across the planet. Look at this one. A researcher named Keth brought up a video. They call it a roller coaster. It accelerates humans to dangerous speeds, then drops them from heights while they're restrained in seats. Listen to them. The audio played. Humans were screaming, but they were also laughing. And when the ride ended, they were cheering and asking to go again. They're paying to be terrified, another researcher observed, and enjoying it. But that was just the beginning. The team discovered extreme sports. Humans had invented hundreds of ways to risk injury for recreation. Skateboarding, where they rode boards down rails and performed aerial tricks. Mountain biking down steep cliffs. Something called base jumping, where they leaped off buildings and bridges with parachutes. This one is called bull riding. Keth showed a video of a human trying to stay on the back of a massive, angry animal. The animal was specifically bred to be difficult to ride. The human lasted 8 seconds before being thrown off and almost trampled. The human got up, limping but grinning, and the crowd went wild. Why would anyone do that? Vreeth asked, watching the replay. According to the information. For sport. For competition. For the thrill. Keth pulled up more data. There are competitions for all of these activities. Humans compete to see who can do the most dangerous version of each sport. They give each other prizes and recognition. The research continued. They found that humans created fictional stories specifically to frighten themselves. Horror movies, thriller novels, scary video games, entire industries existed just to produce content that would trigger fear responses. But they know it's not real, Vreeth protested. So why be afraid? The fear response is still real, Velm explained, having joined the investigation. The humans know intellectually that they're safe, but their bodies still react. They seem to enjoy the biochemical experience of fear when it's controlled. Then the team discovered reality television shows. Programs where humans volunteered to be stranded on deserted islands, left in jungles, or trapped in social experiments. They competed for prizes by enduring discomfort. One show, called Survivor, had been running for decades. Humans watched millions of other humans struggle to make fire, find food, and deal with harsh conditions. For entertainment, they're simulating their own evolutionary struggles, Keth observed. They've achieved civilization, eliminated most natural threats, and now they're recreating those threats artificially. But the discovery that broke Vreeth's understanding came from a casual background check. Commander Tay, the human in charge of First Contact, the face of humanity's diplomatic efforts, had a hobby listed in his public file. Free climbing. Rock climbing without safety equipment. Vreeth pulled up videos. There was Tay, hanging from a cliff face hundreds of meters above the ground. Nothing between him and death except his fingertips and his skill. In one video, he was being interviewed halfway up a mountain. "Why do I climb?" Tay was saying to the camera, dangling casually from a tiny ledge. "Because it clears my head. Up here, there's no room for distractions. Every move matters. Every breath counts. It's the purest form of problem solving. Plus, the view is incredible." The video showed him continuing his climb, moving with careful precision until he reached the summit. At the top, he sat and meditated for 20 minutes before climbing back down. Vreeth called an emergency meeting. The human representing their species to us, the one we've been negotiating with, regularly risks his life hanging from cliffs. For mental clarity, that explains a lot about our negotiations, Keth muttered. Remember when we presented the trade agreement risks? He seemed completely unbothered by the statistical dangers. Because he assesses risk differently, Velm said. To him, those numbers are nothing compared to the risk of his fingers slipping on rock. A junior researcher spoke up. I found something else. Military records. The most decorated soldiers. The ones with the most dangerous missions completed. They all have extreme hobbies. Pilots who race vehicles. Special forces who climb mountains. Rescue workers who surf massive waves. It's backwards, Vreeth said. In our civilizations, valuable individuals are protected. But humans seem to believe that exposing their valuable people to regular danger makes them more valuable, not less. Velm nodded. I think that's exactly what they believe. And based on my observations, they might be right. The team compiled everything into a comprehensive report. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans had created an entire civilization that celebrated and encouraged controlled risk-taking. They had industrialized the production of artificial challenges. They had turned discomfort into entertainment and fear into recreation. When the report was presented to the full Galactic Council, the chamber was silent for a long time. Finally, the council director spoke. So, we have made first contact with a species that deliberately frightens itself for fun, injures itself for sport, and risks death for mental clarity. A species where the most capable individuals are the ones most likely to seek out danger during their rest periods. That's correct, Velm confirmed. And they're not damaged or insane. This is normal for them. Healthy, even. Based on all psychological assessments, yes. They're remarkably well-adjusted. Happy, creative, socially stable. The recreational risk-taking seems to contribute to their mental health rather than harm it. Another council member spoke up. What are the implications for alliance and cooperation? Velm pulled up the final analysis. Humans will volunteer for missions we consider suicide runs. They'll adapt to crisis situations faster than any species we've encountered because they practice crisis management as entertainment. They'll maintain mental stability in extreme isolation or danger because they're accustomed to seeking out those conditions voluntarily. So they're warriors, someone suggested. No, Velm corrected. They're everyone. The engineer, the scientist, the diplomat. They all do this. Tay isn't a soldier. He's an administrator and negotiator who happens to climb mountains to relax. This isn't a warrior culture. It's something else, entirely. A culture that treats adversity as opportunity, Vreth said slowly, understanding finally clicking into place. They don't fear difficulty. They pursue it. Not because they're aggressive or damaged, but because they genuinely believe struggling makes them better. Keth brought up one final piece of evidence. I found a human saying that seems relevant. It's very old. From an Earth philosopher. Smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. The council sat with that for a moment. They know comfort doesn't build competence, the director said. So they refuse to be comfortable. And, not entirely, Velm clarified. They've built a very comfortable civilization. They have the option of safety and ease. They just choose not to take it all the time. They cycle between comfort and challenge deliberately. The director looked at the compiled evidence. Videos of humans jumping from aircraft, climbing cliffs, riding waves, running until they collapsed, scaring themselves with fiction, and competing to endure hardship, all voluntarily, all with smiles on their faces. Recommendation? The director asked. Velm took a breath. Alliance. Definitely alliance. But with clear understanding that we're dealing with a species that views risk fundamentally differently than we do. They'll say yes to missions we'd never attempt. But that's not recklessness. It's trained capability developed through a lifetime of voluntary adversity. The vote for alliance was unanimous. But everyone knew the galaxy had just changed. Somewhere on Earth, Tay received the news of the alliance approval. He celebrated by going for a challenging climb. Because, of course he did. The alliance had been official for 3 months when the crisis happened. Station Kepler 9 was the Galactic Council's premier research facility, studying quantum anomalies at the edge of explored space. 200 scientists from 15 different species worked there, making discoveries that would advance Council science for generations, until the anomaly destabilized. The emergency broadcast reached Earth at 3 a.m, local time. Commander Tay was awake anyway, reviewing trade agreements. He read the message twice, then immediately called his team. Within 2 hours, a human ship was prepped and launching. Tay led the mission personally, along with Bin, Nari, and Jin, the same team that had played gravity games on the asteroid mission. The Council had specifically requested them. That's interesting, Nari observed during the flight. They asked for us, specifically. The troublemakers, who broke safety protocols. They're learning, Tay said with a slight smile. They want people who don't panic when things go wrong. The situation at Kepler 9 was worse than the initial reports suggested. The quantum anomaly had created a spatial distortion field around the station's core. It was tearing the station apart slowly, pulling it in 3 different gravitational directions at once. The alien crew had evacuated to safe zones, but the anomaly was growing. If someone didn't manually recalibrate the containment field from inside the distortion, the anomaly would collapse the entire station, and possibly create a black hole. The problem was simple. Getting to the controls meant entering a zone where gravity pulled in multiple directions, where radiation levels were fatal within hours, and where space itself was folding. The automatic systems had failed. Someone had to go in person. The alien crew chief, a being named Torven, explained the situation with obvious distress. "We've calculated the risks. Whoever enters has a 73% chance of dying before reaching the controls. Even if successful, the radiation exposure will cause severe long-term damage." The entire alien crew was standing in the safe zone, looking at the data, paralyzed by the numbers. Tay looked at his team. "Thoughts?" "I'll go," Bin said immediately. "I've got better piloting scores," Nari countered. "I should do it." "You're both wrong," Jin interrupted. "I'm smaller. Better chance of fitting through the spatial fractures." Tay smiled. It was the smile Vreth had learned to recognize. The smile that meant humans were about to do something that seemed insane. "We'll draw straws." "Shortest goes." Torvin's translator made a sound like choking. "You're volunteering?" "All of you?" "Of course," Tay said, surprised by the question. "That's why we're here. But the risk is acceptable." Bin finished. 73% is better odds than free solo climbing. And the payoff is saving 200 lives instead of just getting bragging rights. Nari was already studying the distortion field maps. "Actually, if we treat this like whitewater rafting, reading the currents, we can probably improve those odds. See here? The gravitational pulls create patterns. We can use them instead of fighting them." Jin nodded. "Like surfing a wave. Ride the force instead of resisting it." The aliens watched in amazement as the humans started planning the impossible mission like they were planning a camping trip. They joked while calculating radiation exposure. They laughed while plotting navigation through folding space. "The tricky part will be the recalibration itself," Tay observed. "The controls are designed for stable gravity. We'll be working while being pulled in 3 directions. So like doing repairs in a centrifuge," Bin said. "I've trained for that." "Well, not exactly that, but close enough." Torvin finally understood. "You've all practiced for situations like this. Not this exact scenario, but similar. Every weekend," Nari confirmed cheerfully. "Humans like to stay sharp." They drew straws. Bin got the shortest one. He whooped with excitement, like he'd won a prize, instead of a near-suicide mission. "Lucky," Jin muttered, genuinely disappointed. The preparation took 30 minutes. Bin suited up in the best protective gear available, which everyone knew wouldn't be enough. The radiation would get through. The gravitational forces would damage his body. If he succeeded, he was looking at months of medical treatment. Before entering the distortion field, Bin turned to the alien crew. "If I don't make it, tell my family I went out doing something important, and tell them it was a hell of a ride." Then he stepped into the field. Watching from the monitors was like watching someone surf inside a storm. Bin was pulled sideways, then up, then in 3 directions at once. He used the forces, just like Nari had suggested, letting gravity sling him toward the core instead of fighting it. "This is incredible." Bin's voice came through the comm, strained but excited. "It's like the gravity games, but turned up to 11. He crashed into a wall, grunted, and kept going. The radiation alarms were screaming. The gravitational stress was showing on his vital signs. His body was taking damage with every second, but he was laughing. "Okay. Spatial fracture coming up. Going to try to squeeze through. If I get stuck, just know that this was awesome." The monitors showed him contorting his body, sliding through a gap in folded space that looked impossibly small. He made it through, though his suit tore and more radiation flooded in. Made it. Core controls ahead. Going for it now. The final stretch was the worst. 3 different gravitational fields fought over him. The monitors showed him being stretched and compressed at the same time. The medical sensors showed his body failing, but his hands reached the controls. Got it. Running the recalibration sequence now. His fingers moved over the panel with trained precision, even as his vision blurred and his muscles trembled. Years of practicing difficult tasks in difficult conditions had prepared him for exactly this moment. Sequence initiated. Should stabilize in 30 seconds. Someone might want to catch me because I'm going to pass out now. The anomaly stabilized. The gravitational chaos smoothed out. The spatial fractures sealed. Station, Kepler 9, was saved. Bin collapsed. The rescue team, now able to enter safely, pulled him out. He was alive, but barely. Radiation poisoning, multiple fractures, internal bleeding. The medical team worked frantically, but before he passed out completely, Bin opened his eyes and looked at Jin and Nari. "Did you see that spatial surfing move? New record for style points." Jin was crying and laughing at the same time. "You absolute maniac." That was beautiful. 3 days later, Bin woke up in medical. His recovery would take months, maybe years, but he was smiling. The full council had sent messages of gratitude. They called him a hero. They offered honors and recognition. Bin's response, which became famous across the galaxy, "It was fun." Well, fun isn't exactly the right word. It was meaningful, important, and yeah, kind of fun. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Vreth visited him in recovery. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. When you were in that distortion field, being torn apart by gravitational forces, bombarded by radiation, were you actually enjoying it?" Bin thought for a moment. Enjoying isn't quite right, but I was fully alive. Every cell in my body was focused on the task. No distractions, no doubts, just pure problem-solving in the most extreme conditions possible. That state of total presence, where everything else falls away and you're just you against the challenge, he smiled. "Yeah, I kind of live for those moments." "That's what I thought," Vreth said quietly. "The Council wants to thank you formally. We're also updating our crisis response protocols. For impossible situations, we're going to call humans first." "Not impossible," Bin corrected. "Just really, really hard. There's a difference." The official council report was brief. Human team successfully resolved crisis, deemed unsolvable by conventional assessment. Subject Bin entered 73% lethal scenario voluntarily and improved odds through unconventional approach based on recreational experience. Recommended protocol update. For all scenarios, rated above 60% lethality, contact human specialists first. They will either succeed or teach us something new about the boundaries of possible, possibly both. The unofficial report, which circulated among council members privately, was more honest. "We've spent millennia avoiding danger, optimizing for safety, protecting ourselves from risk. Then humans show up and demonstrate that a species that deliberately seeks out difficulty might be more capable in crisis, not less. They're not crazy. They're trained. Every game, every sport, every stupid challenge has been practiced for moments like this. We owe them an apology and a thank you. We thought they were reckless. They were just ready." 2 months into recovery, Bin received a visitor. Commander Tay brought news. "The Council wants to establish a joint human galactic crisis response team. They're asking if you'd lead it when you're recovered." Bin's eyes lit up. "Will it involve more impossible situations?" Mema. Will it involve more impossible situations? Frequently. I'm in." Tay smiled. "I thought you might say that." "Oh, and Jin wanted me to tell you that while you were unconscious, he set a new record for maintenance pod barrel rolls. 23 in a row." 23? Bin sat up too fast and winced. "That's what he was counting on," Tay said. "Nothing motivates humans like a challenge." As Tay left, Bin lay back in his medical bed, already planning his comeback. The doctors said 6 months minimum recovery. He'd make it 4. Because that's what humans did. They looked at impossible and said, "Challenge accepted." And somewhere in the galaxy, The council was finally beginning to understand that when humans said something was fun, it didn't mean it was easy or safe. It meant they were willing to do it anyway. Maybe that was the most human thing of all.